The best learning solutions aren't created for people, they're built alongside them.
We're building with, not for. And I think it's been such a huge pivot in mindset, but what it's done already is just create so much more of a partnership because it's not something that's being given to them and saying, do this. It's something that they're a part of and that they'll really rally behind and that they're able to lead without us.
That's Kathryn Murrow, Director of Leadership Development and eLearning at the restaurant chain Bojangles. Kathryn joins Da Vinci's Jenny Fadulo and me to share how learning leaders can create stronger partnerships, solve the right problems, and drive lasting performance. Next on Powered by Learning.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by Da Vinci Interactive. Da Vinci's approach to learning is grounded in 30 years of innovation and expertise. We use proven strategies and leading technology to develop solutions that empower learners to improve quality and boost performance. Learn more at davinci.com.
Joining me now is Da Vinci's Director Learning Experience, Jenny Fadulo, and our guest, Kathryn Murrow, Director Leadership Development and eLearning at Bojangles. Thank you for joining us, Kathryn. It's great to see you again.
Hi, Catherine. Great to see you.
Hello, Jenny and Susan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're looking forward to the conversation, and we enjoyed speaking with you when we did our pre-interview a few weeks ago. So now we're really looking forward to having this conversation and sharing it with our listeners. Kathryn, start out by telling us a little bit about Bojangles. People have probably seen signs in their community or as they go on road trips, and talk to us about the company as well as your role there.
Well, if you are like me, I was a Florida native. I now am a proud North Carolinian. But there was not Bojangles in Florida when I was growing up. So what I have learned and grown to love is that they're a Carolina-born restaurant chain and really focused on home-style food. So Southern chicken, biscuits, and tea. That's our motto. Chicken, biscuits, and tea.
Can't go wrong with that.
No, unfortunately for my waistline.
Oh.
And, we are actually coming up on celebrating our 50th anniversary as a brand. It was a restaurant founded in Charlotte, started here in Charlotte, but has grown quite a bit. We now are, I checked this morning actually, because every week it changes, but we're up to 882 restaurants
Wow.
and 17 states. So really what started in the Carolinas is moving towards a national brand, and our expansion market is booming. But it's really just good Southern food, and our hospitality is something that we pride ourselves on as well.
Sounds like good comfort food.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about your role and your journey getting there. I love your background and how you started out in education. So share a little bit about that.
So I started, like you said, started out in education, but I was a 22-year-old English lit degree major coming out of college, and teaching was something that I thought, you know what, I can do this. I loved to learn English. And so I said, well, I'm sure I'd like to teach it. And I did. I fell in love with it. Um, and that evolved pretty organically to me moving into what we call in the education system an instructional coach role, which is really just a non evaluative peer coach that works with teachers to improve not just their content knowledge, but also the pedagogy side of it. So, really, learning and development. Although I think it's called that more nowadays. Back when I was in that role starting in 2012, there wasn't as much talk of it. And moved from an instructional coach into a larger district. I was from Central Florida, so if anyone's from Orlando, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I moved into a district that was incredibly large. It's the seventh or eighth largest district in the United States. It actually changes sometimes based on enrollment with another neighboring district, but it was Orange County Public Schools, and I was there for about 4 years. Moved through about four different leadership roles there, but um, that was where I think I really started to fall in love with leadership development and started to recognize that what I was doing had a name, that it was leadership development. Um, and I met someone, my mentor, my former boss. She really just changed my life in that role that I was in throughout the course of about 3 years. And we ended up founding the first leadership development department in the district, and started a new team there and started working to help our principals, our school leaders, of all ranges and roles. But we started with the principal because they're the head of that school. And our former deputy superintendent, Dr. Armbruster, I don't know if he'll ever hear this, but he'll laugh if he does. But he would say, a school will rise or fall based on its principal. And we started working with them to start what we call diagnosing root cause. And that's where it evolved now to me in this role. But without her and that role and that process of really understanding how to look at a situation, how to diagnose root cause, how to uncover the true nature of why things were happening and to work from there, that has just transformed my work and really guided me, to where I am today and where I, hope to go in the future.
What a great foundation for what you're doing. And just give us a brief overview of your current role at Bojangles. What are your day-to-day responsibilities?
Well, we are a small but mighty team. So, within our training department, we have, I guess you could call it, the left arm and the right arm. And one of those arms that I'll pick right, we're the leadership development side. There's a lot of training content. We manage the LMS. And so it's very content heavy, but also there's a lot of strategy in that, and partnership and collaboration across departments within our support center at the corporate level, but also our field leaders, and especially our senior field leaders. And then on the other side, we have our field trainers who support our new restaurant openings, our franchisees. We're a company who is about 75% comprised of franchisees. And so I would say out of our corporate restaurants, we have almost 300. So there's a pretty big split there, and we support both. But what we're really focused on right now is developing what I've dubbed, our enablement ecosystem, and looking at, as an organization, how are we enabling people to be the best versions of themselves, and giving them the tools and resources that they need so that they either move up internally, which is of course what we want, or that they just grow as professionals, and wherever they choose to go, they are equipped with those strategies and soft skills and those resources where they can go and make a difference.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. I'm always intrigued because you don't meet many professionals at this level that chose L&D as their field of study in college, right? Or purposefully did that. So it's always so interesting to connect to others to find out how you landed in this
That
field.
sounds like the
Yeah.
perfect journey, that's for sure.
Exactly. So I know what initially brought us together was your response to a LinkedIn poll that I posted asking what you felt, learning professionals out there felt was the biggest challenge in our field right now. And you answered doing more with less. So I think that resonates with almost everyone in our field. So when you say doing more with less, what does that look like in your world today in at Bojangles in your role?
It's just recently that I think we started to, accelerate in the kind of embodiment and full, I guess you could say, just mental model maybe
Mhm.
of that idea of more doesn't need to be faster, more doesn't need to relate to quantity. And what we've been doing as a team, and it's really started to permeate throughout some of our partnerships as well, is pausing and looking at whatever the situation is. Maybe it's a training request, maybe it's an initiative, but thinking about, well, wait a second, why is this needed? What are we trying to accomplish here? What is the behavior change that we want to see? what does success look like? Starting to ask ourselves some hard questions, and also thinking about, are we actually building something to solve the problem that we've identified? Or
Mhm.
are we trying to come up with a new initiative that looks like it might be a solution? Or, yes, sure, we can build this training for you. We can retrain. We get a lot of, can we retrain on this? And I've started to ask, well, why do we need to retrain? What's going on? What are the behaviors that we're seeing is it really a retraining issue, or was it ever trained correctly in the beginning? Is there a knowledge acquisition issue? Are we giving them what they need from an enablement point of view?
Mhm.
And I think what's one example I can give you is we've taken an initiative that we launched last year. And I was telling my supervisor, she's our senior director, I was talking to her about this and I said, I think the reason it hasn't stuck the way that we wanted to and the way that we envisioned is because we created it for our field leaders. We did not create it with them. And I think that's
Mm.
probably commonplace in learning and development. Training creates things, L&D creates things. And I told her, I said, if they sat at the table with us and created it with us and we were doing this together, they'd own it because they're now developing it. And so that's what we're doing. We're coming back and we're aligning and we're looking at what is our goal here? What are you already doing that's working? What does this realistically look like in your role? Because we know the day to day changes and is very fast paced, but we're building with, not for. And I think it's been such a huge pivot in mindset. But what it's done already is just create so much more of a partnership, because it's not something that's being given to them and saying, do this. It's something that they're a part of and that they'll really rally behind and that they're able to lead without us. I think sometimes anyone that will listen to this will probably resonate, when you have this amazing training, this amazing development initiative, and you're like, this is going to work. And then it goes out and it might work for some, but it's kind of just meh, it might plateau. And I really, looking back, the most successful things that I've ever been a part of have always been a collaboration.
Mhm.
And I think to the point of doing more with less, we're doing more, and our team might be small immediately on training and development, but now we're pulling in our field leaders, so we're able to do more with some of our partners even though we're a small team, and start to really enable them. They're learning and growing, we're learning and growing. It's really been a cool process.
Yeah, I know at Da Vinci that is something we really pride ourselves on too when we begin a project, right? The client might come in and say, "Hey, we want you to build a 30-minute, e-learning module." It's like, "Wait, let's back up and have this conversation to ensure the learning solution is both needed and capable of addressing the issue, right? Let's diagnose first, and make sure that we're gearing it. What what do you think you've learned the most your experience of this journey of building that partnership of diagnosis alignment? What do you think, has taught you the most about the importance of that?
I think I've had a lot of time to reflect on this. I have a long
Mhm.
commute too. So there's days where I'm driving to and from where I actually get to reflect and kind of like, transition from work to home and think about this. But it's really just made me realize and regret in some ways, but you obviously can't go back and change that. The number of times that I think there were missed opportunities or even outright failures, in the sense of I didn't do what I could have to empower this person. And I
Mhm.
think, my title is leadership development, and so many, depending on the organization, so many things can fall under that umbrella. It could be training, it could be L&D, it could be, whatever you'd like to call it. But when I think about what my goal is at the end of the day, it is to develop leaders.
Mhm.
And they don't develop if they're not an active participant in their own learning. And it's made me stop and think about every single thing that I'm creating and developing. Like, I need to get an operator in here to vet this with me. I need to get a field leader in here to really, flesh out my thinking. And that takes more time. It is a slower process, but what I found is that it's a better process because the quality and your output and your buy-in and your engagement is just so much higher because number one, it's relevant to them and it's realistic. You're getting the perspectives that you need, but number two, they're involved and it makes them want to learn. And I think
Mhm.
that's the most fulfilling part about being in L&D is you see people that want to learn, want to grow, and then realize that they can because you're
Mhm.
providing an environment that is conducive for that.
And that has to
Absolutely.
translate into also a greater learning impact. If you're creating that training with them and not for them, and you're seeing that engagement, I mean, have you seen that translate into better results?
So, one initiative that we're focused on right now is we have we call them regional training managers on our corporate side. They oversee training for an entire geographic region. So to put that in a number, about 60 stores,
Hmm.
and they work in tandem with a senior field leader. And we really wanted to redo a foundational leadership series for different roles within our field. Welcome to this role. Here's a session where you can really start to think about who you are as a leader, who you want to be, and what it's going to take to get you there. And the first time that I shouldn't even say partnered with them. It was, I created the the presentation, the session, and I facilitated it. And I was like, why don't you guys watch me do it, and get a feel for it, fully understand it.
Mhm.
I said, and the next time we'll do it side by side, and then I'll release it to you. Gradual release model. It sounded great in my mind, and it fell flat. They didn't, I think, fully grasp the content and I asked him, I was like, what do you think it is? Because I know you guys know these concepts, but it seemed like you weren't connected with the learning. And they were just like we didn't feel like we knew it. Obviously we're not developing it. So what we did is the next time that we hosted a session, before that I did a table read with them and we went slide by slide and we talked through everything. And one of the training managers, she told me, she goes, I need to know what the purpose is of each section and how it relates to them. What's the intent? What are they supposed to get out of it? And I said, perfect, I can tell you that, no problem, but also I want you to tell me what you think it is so that we're aligned. And we started having those deeper conversations, and when I tell you, the next time that we were facilitating a session, it was night and day. It was,
Great.
they had a chance to make real edits, they had a chance to share feedback. And so, again, that partnership came into play, and it's just been so much more rewarding, I think, on both ends for us to be able to work together in that way, because it's not me handing something to them and say, hey, this is what we're going to facilitate, I need you to learn it. It's, hey, let's look at this together and think about what this could look like in the field. Is this accurate? Is this what they need? Is this what you're seeing? And that has made a huge difference.
That's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. I know we had talked about organizational change, and you see this in so many organizations, right? Organizational change means senior leaders say do this and they pass it to the frontline workers and then launch initiatives before the right enablement conditions are in place, right? So I know you've talked about enablement. So what are some of the most common signs that an organization isn't ready? And maybe you have, specific examples there for a changing initiative. And what needs to happen before moving forward? How do we better connect?
So I learned a phrase back when we were in deep in the pandemic. And I
Okay.
was working in Orange County Public Schools, and we had a very large push in that time of social and emotional learning and psychological safety because half of our kids weren't in a physical building to connect with others. And we needed them to feel connected so that they were able to learn. But the phrase was conditions for learning. And it was actually embedded into the performance evaluation model at the time.
Hmm.
And it was something that we looked for no matter what. immediately. Like the first thing when you enter a virtual classroom or a physical classroom is, what are the conditions for learning? Do students have what they need? Is there a warm atmosphere? Are there supplies available? Are there directions so that they know what to reference? Just basic things that you think are commonplace, but when they're missing, it's very glaring and it
Mhm.
causes almost an immediate disruption to the learning. It's a stopgap. And so that's a big thing, are the conditions for learning. Do we have the resources available to just establish a baseline for whatever it is that we're trying to change? And I think a big part of those conditions for learning is, are the senior leaders who are at the helm of whatever change is being pushed forward, are they in agreement on what success looks like?
Mhm.
Are they in agreement on, here's what we want to see, here's what we don't want to see, here's how we're going to measure if this is effective? I think there's been examples where I've seen, in multiple organizations, where you'll ask different senior leaders about the same initiative and they'll tell you a different definition, or they'll have a very different perception of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so automatically you see that, well, they're looking at it from this vantage point and they're looking at it from this one. And not that they're wrong, but they're not aligned.
Mhm.
And so then you have a disconnect at the highest level, which to me means when you're trying to cascade it, you're at a huge disadvantage. It's going to cascade in different ways depending on the leader that you're either reporting to or that is most closely connected to you.
Mhm.
So I think it's an alignment issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, conditions for learning. It makes me think of really conditions for performance, right? So as learning leaders, when peers come and other sales managers, or hey, I have a problem, I need training, right? One of the first things we ask is, well, do they have all the tools they need to perform? What are the support systems? Do they know what their goals are? Things like that. So it's making sure that the right conditions for performance are in place before we decide that, hey, we need to train them. But I love, let's look in the classroom too, or the learning environment. Do they have the right? Are they going to have a successful learning experience? I love that.
And I think conditions for learning lead to conditions for performance. Those are so
Performance.
connected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Love it. So you mentioned one of the biggest transformations you are leading is helping Bojangles understand that an LMS means so much more than just compliance training. What Tell us about that journey and what it's taken you right now to shift that mindset.
I have been an LMS user and administrator, gosh, all of my professional career, because when I started in education, I was a user. As I moved into leadership roles, became an administrator in some capacity, but have been at the, we would call it super admin right now, but you're managing it for an
Right.
enterprise level. I've done that in the school district level and also here. And I think what I've seen in some ways in both of those is that it essentially can be just a very expensive checklist. You are paying six figures to go in there and confirm that someone completed, and I say completed, not necessarily learned, whatever module is required. And obviously there's compliance trainings that you do need to verify, but what I've been able to there's a plan in place and we're in the early stages for sure, but a big part of shifting that mindset from the LMS beyond just, oh, let me log in here to do my training, I have to go complete this. It's almost it just a negative sort of, oh, let me go do this. It's very task oriented. And our LMS provider is Docebo. They have been incredible with some of the most recent developments that they have integrated into the system. And their CEO, I attended their conference this spring for the first time, and their CEO is so focused on learning. He says it's so much. And you can tell because in the platform, they are coming out with different additions, products, things like AI simulated coaching that focus on the learner's experience.
Mhm.
And one thing that we recently launched, where I'm calling it the Learning Hub. I hope people start, you know, tagging along with me, but I really do want it to be that. Is we launched dashboards. We have now advanced insights dashboards that were built through QuickSight, and it gives our GMs at the store level, it gives our above store level field leaders, it gives our very senior most field leaders, all the way up to our chiefs, views at a glance of what's going on at a training level. And it's completion to a degree, but it also shows from a leadership development side who is even choosing to attend some of these classes that we're offering. Is there a particular region or area that's sending a lot more people? If so, we want to start asking questions. You sent 5 people in this tiny geographic area to a leadership development session. What are you seeing as a result? Is it translating to metrics? We're starting to connect it to our BI metrics and looking at, if you're sending someone to a class that is focused on labor and scheduling, we would want to see improvements in labor and scheduling. And so
Mhm.
that's where we're starting to make the connections to the data that they're used to looking at, but linking it back to learning. Because for us, it's really great information on the development side of, well, if they come to this class and they take the time out of their day to be out of the store, to spend the money to travel, we want to make sure that there's an ROI for them.
Mhm.
But there's also something, we're trying to do gamification in a way. We're giving badges when they come to classes. We're in the process of redoing the entire aesthetic of the LMS to make it very personal, where they're getting a greeting that is for them when they log into their homepage, where they can see, hey, here's your progress on your own personal leadership development journey. Whereas not, here's a checklist of your team members who haven't completed this training. So
Mhm.
not that they don't have access to the same things, but we're really intentionally focusing on the learning side of it and showing them how the enablement, pieces, components that are in the system can work for them, but also their teams. It's that trickle down effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always been, showing ROI, connecting ROI to learning. Right. It's probably been the number one challenge for us in this field. And I'm so glad that there are now tools. You mentioned BI, just so many tools out there that now can help us tell the story through data and that linkage. And that's so powerful. So no podcast would be complete unless we talked about AI, right? So
And that was a good segue.
so I know you describe AI as a tool that's helping you create more space for diagnosis strategy and human work. So how do you see AI helping learning leaders such as yourself become more strategic and influential within your organization?
So when I log into LinkedIn, it is you're bombarded with updates and look what I did with Claude and look what I automated with Zapier. And it's so cool, but in the same breath, a little overwhelming. And I know there's been a lot of conversations recently about, AI taking jobs. And
Mhm.
now you see the numbers and they're scary about the replacement of people with AI. And it's so funny. I read just last night an article, and when I searched it again this morning, there's a couple different people who were talking about it on LinkedIn, but they mentioned IKEA, and it was this case study about how IKEA had a they had an AI agent that they developed. I think the name was Billy.
Mhm.
And what it ended up doing was, from a customer service perspective, it was able to alleviate or take care of 47% of those requests. So then you think, okay, wow, what are you going to do with the 8,500? That was the number, that was 8,500 workers who were on the customer support side. And you hear about people being let go, but what IKEA did is, instead of letting them go, they took a look at what are the other, 60 something or 50 something percent of those requests. And they found that a lot of them centered around design. What would look best in this room? And it was very catalog specific. So what they did, and this was over the course of a couple years, I believe. So they're just now, I think, able to report on it, but they upskilled those 8,500 people and they turned them into interior designers. And so
Mm.
instead of eliminating the role, they looked at, well, what's the other percentage of these requests? Let's fill a need. they upskilled them with, and obviously AI is helping with that too, but they said that I believe the number was 1.4 billion they were seeing in a revenue increase as a
Wow.
result.
Right.
And I read it and I was like, this is so cool. This is, to me, that's what AI should be doing. It should be taking away the administrative work that doesn't, number one, I think for most people, like, yield much joy in the
Mhm.
sense of like
Mhm.
answering emails and just, being on the phone all day. But it frees you up to be creative, and it frees you up to start thinking about, what does impact look like? How can I be in the field? How can I
Mhm.
start linking things together? And so when I think about the future with AI, for me, what I hope is that it becomes a tool that can automate so much of the administrative portion of work, where I can be physically present to actually see the impact and to
Mhm.
report on the things that AI will never, be able to report on.
Right. We work with clients to, the tools are helping us do more with practice, right? Practice the job before you do it, and also, support in the flow of work. So the I feel like the 70-20-10 model we all know is shifting with these tools, because we say 70% is on the job, 20% is mentor, 10 is really your formal. It's going to shift that model. And 70-20-10, I think they're going to find that eh, learners are better enabled before they start the job because of these tools. So using them strategically is really going to shift that.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is. I agree.
When I first, I think I heard about Chat GPT, gosh, 2023 ish, and I was just like, I don't know, you thought AI, you thought aliens, you thought like UFOs,
We
you're thinking
did,
like,
right?
artificial
Yeah. Right.
intelligence. And that, I'm such a fan of it now, but there's been a lot of, I guess, personal upskilling where I've had to really take a look at, if I'm using AI, and I use it so much in my personal life, it's in the process of helping me DIY some of my house projects. But I've also just really learned that I have to spot check myself, and I have to really look at, what is it actually giving me, because it
Yeah.
will
Oh,
and
absolutely.
does hallucinate.
It does.
And
Well,
It does. Yeah.
that and it's a reminder to all of us of the importance of keeping the humans in the loop, whether you're creating
Absolutely.
training or that wonderful
yes,
story about the IKEA workers. I mean, that sends such a warm, positive message to customers of IKEA that they have found a way not just to give those team members something to do, but maybe something that's even more important and more valuable. So hopefully it can translate for all of us in those kinds of ways as we look to
Yeah,
leverage
and
it
it
more.
almost ties back to the doing more with less. So to bring that full
right.
circle, what brought us together was like your answer to that survey question. Give me one thing, those learning leaders that are listening, where should their focus be? Where should they put their energy first if they want to create meaningful and lasting impact?
I the one thing that I have continued to, I think, keep in the forefront of my mind, and if I'm ever frustrated, I go back to this. But you know, when I was working in Orange County, my boss, again, don't know if she'll ever hear this, but her name's Dr. Kathy Schuler. She's incredible. She's the chief learning officer right now. But she would always tell me when we were in school, she'd be like, Catherine, what's the root cause? What's the root cause? Why is this happening? What do you think is
Hmm.
the reason for this? And she just changed my thinking so much. So now my initial go to is, what's the root cause? What's the root cause? What's the root cause? And I mean, it's so repetitive, but when you really start thinking about what's the root cause, I think what you'll find is that your initial answer is not the root cause,
Hmm.
and that you have to always dig a little bit deeper. But what I found is that when you find it, it typically solves more than one problem, because you typically discover that the root cause is a systems issue. And if you can fix a systems issue, you're fixing quite a bit. That's a large umbrella for most
Hmm.
people.
That's
So
great, great
if they could
advice. I
remember anything,
agree.
root
I
cause,
agree.
root
Okay.
cause.
I like it. I like it.
And we're going to look up your mentor, make sure
Oh
she
my
hears
gosh,
this
Let's tag
she's
her.
episode.
incredible.
Yeah, let's
I
tag
think
her
about
when
her
we post
every
it.
day. Oh my gosh, she'll love it. She'll give me a call. She sometimes, the last time she texted me, she's like, "I just went through a Bojangles," and she goes, "It was good." I said, "That's because I didn't make the biscuit, Dr. Schuler." So
Oh,
yeah,
Well, we will think of you every time we see a Bojangles. And
yes,
absolutely.
please go get some chicken biscuits and tea, everyone. My shameless Bojangles plug.
well, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. We appreciate your insight insights, and I think you're definitely empowering a lot of people to think differently. So thank you, Kathryn.
Yes, thank you, Kathryn. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Jenny, thank you so much for just a random survey question. I would have never thought. Anyone out there, if you ever hesitate to do a poll, don't, because you never know where it could lead.
Where it leads, yeah.
This has been so great for me. I feel like I've learned a lot and been able to reflect a lot. So thank you. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Continued success in your role too. My thanks to Da Vinci's Jenny Fadulo and our guest, Kathryn Murrow from Bojangles, for joining me today. If you have a suggestion for a topic or guest, please reach out to us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com. And don't forget that you can subscribe to Powered by Learning wherever you get your podcasts.